Hi, Joel Curtis here. Starting out with our hazardous weather, the only advisories in effect are from the Fairbanks Forecast Office. Winter weather advisory for the northwest Arctic coast, Chukchi Sea, western Seward Peninsula, and St. Lawrence Island, and that's into tonight. They may be taking this one down toward evening sometime, but gusts of 30 up to 50, blowing and drifting snow, and some poor visibilities. We have winter weather advisory for much of the central interior, also until 6 p.m. tonight, gusts to 40 with blowing and drifting snow. And also there's a wind advisory for the eastern Alaska range through noon Saturday, gusts 40 to 60 miles per hour. Looking at our satellite loop, you can see the cloud system that's over the central interior right now, and that's supported that advisory that they had for the central interior. Also, you can see a new system coming up into the Gulf of Alaska from the south, and again, numerous snow showers over the Bering Sea. So for today's weather, a couple of trough-like systems that are over the central interior, giving some light snow, and again those wind and blowing snow that was with those advisories. A weak low center down by Cape Newenham, about 989 millibars. And then another weak one over by Anadir in the Bering Sea, 999. And you can see that approaching weather system, 971 millibars with rain out ahead of it. And that's a good slug of warm air coming up with it. For tonight's weather, we're looking at that system now has moved northward. And it's still well south of Kodiak, 972 millibars. Lots of wind out ahead of the frontal system, rain over the Gulf, and a lot of mostly rain at lower elevations in the Panhandle, but snow still at higher elevations. Snow showers for much of South Central. Also continued really light snow from the eastern Brooks Range on over to Kotzebue Sound and to the Bering Strait. And again, those persistent snow showers over the Bering Sea. Moving on to Saturday's weather, we've got now that system has advanced up to the Alaska Peninsula, just southwest of Kodiak Island. The front is just offshore for most of the Gulf Coast. Rain over the southeast Alaska and a good amount of wind. Snow showers over south central and southwestern Alaska, as well as up in the eastern Brooks Range on over to the Seward Peninsula, and then snow showers persisting over the Bering Sea. For Sunday, now you can really see the warm air starting to move up, as indicated by the warm front in the Gulf of Alaska. There's some heavier rain behind this system. Again, snow at higher elevations for southeast Alaska, but rain moved into a lot of the lower elevations for the Panhandle. Snow showers over south central again, with some mixed rain and snow right along the coast and Kodiak Island. And a 985 millibar low has moved over into Bristol Bay with associated trough now along the west coast. Snow showers over lots of the mainland of Alaska. Snow showers continuing out over the Bering Sea. And also you can see a new weather system has moved into the Komodorsky Islands over the western Aleutians, and that frontal system has snow out ahead of it and a slug of warm air south of Amchitka. So our low temperatures starting for Saturday morning in the 30s and lower 40s for the Panhandle. Out on the Gulf, 37 down to 33 at Kodiak. In the 20s for South Central, 0 up at Gulkana, 17 at Talkeetna, 13 over there, -1 toward McGrath, and down in the mid-20s or so for the southwestern portion near Lake Iliamna. And then for Saturday morning for the North Slope, minus single digits down to the minus teens. As you get into the Brooks Range, it's getting really cold with minus 18 to minus 14. some over by Kotzebue Sound in the single digits. And then as we move down further south, the temperature increases until you get to about 20 degrees in the Alaska range with those downslope winds. Okay, for the low temperatures for Saturday morning for the southwest. As you go out the Alaska Peninsula, the 20s and 30s. For the Pribilos, 22, and then out by Shemya, 23 degrees. Now for a high temperature Saturday afternoon, clearly in the mid-40s for the Panhandle, in the mid to lower 30s, and even up to 40 near Homer, 13 at Gulkana, 38 at Talkeetna, and then as you can see, it gets colder the further west you go. For Saturday afternoon, temperatures in the single digits on the north slope, single digits again for the Brooks Range, and then as you get further south, all the way up to 21 as you get in those downslope winds. And then as going out the Alaska Peninsula, again, temperatures in the 20s, 26 in the Pribilos, 30 all the way out there at Shemya, and then along the west coast in the teens. Then for a low temperature Sunday morning, 30s and lower 40s for the Panhandle again, 38 for Middleton Island, 32 for Kodiak, 4 for Gulkana, 32 for Talkeetna, in the mid to lower 30s for South Central, and 32 for over near Lake Iliamna. For a low temperature Sunday morning, single digits all the way down into the minus teens along the north slope, minus 10 to minus 16 in the Brooks Range, and then as you get further south, again, you can see a little bit of warming all the way up to 12 as you get down to the Alaska Range, minus 7 for St. Lawrence Island, minus 9, and plus 5 for Nome. Okay, in the southwest Alaska for Sunday morning, as you go out the peninsula, 27, mid-20s, 20 for the Pribilofs, 7 for Nunivak Island, 12 for Bethel. And then as you get up towards Norton Sound, single digits, and then minus 7 still for St. Lawrence Island. High temperatures Sunday afternoon in the mid-40s for the Panhandle, mid-30s for South Central, 40 for Middleton Island, 16 for Gulkana, 32 for Talkeetna. And then as you get down toward Lake Iliamna, 39 degrees, and then out the peninsula, the temperatures start dropping off. For high temperatures Sunday afternoon, still minus single digits for the north slope, plus single digits for the Alaska Range, and then as you get down all the way to the Alaska Range south, you've got 29 degrees, again with downslope winds over at Norton Sound, 13 for Nome, 16 for Unalakleet, and minus 4 for St. Lawrence Island. And that finishes our temperature forecast for today, and stay tuned for our marine forecast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi, it's meteorologist Joel Curtis with your aviation weather. Starting out with the flying weather Saturday morning, most of our IFR is concentrated over the Gulf of Alaska, including Kodiak Island up to Prince William Sound, Yakutat area, and the northern Panhandle. Also a little bit in the far eastern part of the Panhandle. A little bit over the Yukon Flats, and some over the far eastern Chugach and Wrangell St. Elias. On Saturday morning, we've got a little bit of IFR along the north slope, quite a bit in southwest Alaska, including down to the Alaska Peninsula. Also, we have Kodiak Island up along the eastern Kenai Peninsula into Prince William Sound, all along the Gulf Coast and all of the Panhandle. On Sunday morning, that IFR in the southern areas persists, southwest Alaska, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, and Prince William Sound, and all along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. Also, considerable IFR conditions along the North Slope and the Yukon Flats, and a little bit moving into the far western Aleutians. On Sunday afternoon, that IFR conditions persist along the North Slope, some in the central interior, down through Norton Sound, all the way along the west coast, down into Bristol Bay, the west side of Cook Inlet, also Prince William Sound, and all the way over into the Panhandle, and with a frontal system approaching into the Aleutians, some moving in over there. Our past conditions on Saturday. Anativik Pass, VFR, but we've got some marginal VFR conditions as you leave the north entrance. Similarly with Adigan Pass, VFR conditions, but marginal VFR to the north. For Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, both marginal VFR and expect turbulence for those two passes. For Rainy Pass, marginal VFR and expect turbulence, considerable turbulence in that area too. Windy Pass, marginal VFR, expect low-level turbulence to the south entrance. Isabel Pass, marginal VFR, and again expect turbulence. For Mentasta, marginal VFR. Tanita Pass, marginal VFR, and again expect that turbulence. Portage Pass, IFR, and again with turbulence. And Chilkoot and White Pass, both IFR, and there will be considerable turbulence for both passes. Our freezing levels Saturday morning at the surface for most of the state. And then we see it ramping up to 2,000 feet for Kodiak Island, Baranoff Island, and Prince of Wales Island area. It takes getting out into the Gulf to get to 4,000 feet on the freezing level. For icing on Saturday, expect below 2,000 feet, isolated moderate for most of the state. However, I've got a couple of areas designated as considerable moderate over the Iliamna, Lake Clark areas, the northern part of the Alaska Peninsula near Augustine, and then between 2,000 and 10,000 feet from Prince William Sound all the way down to Dixon Entrance. For our jet stream on Saturday, we've got 65 knot southerlies going up through the Bering Strait and over St. Lawrence Island, 65 knot westerlies over the North Slope, 65 knots southwesterlies over the Panhandle, and the main part of the jet going into British Columbia. For our 9,000 foot winds, looking at the Panhandle, we got southwesterlies 45 knots, and as soon as you get over into British Columbia, it ramps up to 65. For much of South Central, anywhere ranging 30 to 50 knots, and looks like about south-southeast or so. Get up to Kotzebue Sound, 30 knots, and easterlies 30 knots as you get over the northern part of the Alcan. Out in the Aleutians, northerlies ramping up to 55 knots in the area of Adak. And our 3,000 foot winds on Saturday, which has been the cause of a lot of our turbulence, 65 knots as you get down toward Dixon Entrance, 40 knots over much of the Panhandle, 55 knots over the Cordova area, a lot of easterlies, 40 to 50 knots in the western portion of the state, 50 knots over the Chukchi Sea, and northerlies 45 to 55 knots over the Aleutians. And our turbulence, again, we got two areas of isolated severe over the Lake Clark, Iliamna area and Cole Bay, and then considerable moderate turbulence for most of the southern areas. Well, folks, that's all our time we have for the aviation, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms, why they occurred. The distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region. The rain-snow line, all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not, didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way. Right. Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense in what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses, are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. There are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threat so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. One of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set, and then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak. We'll be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together
Okay.
at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're deriving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now out, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, here's your marine forecast. First with the ice edge. The northerlies are expected to end, let's say midweek sometime Wednesday, although the models are not real certain. Current ice edge is about 10 miles from St. Matthew. Saturday's marine forecast for the outside waters in southeast Alaska. Storm force winds 40 to 50 knots and seas up to 22 feet. For the inside waters, winds ranging from 10 all the way up to 40 knots down there in Clarence Strait, and seas up to 11 feet. For Sunday for southeast, onshore flow 25 to 30 knots and seas up to 19 feet. On the inside waters, 15 to 25 knots and seas up to 5 feet. For the outside waters, south central, storm force winds up to 50 knots, seas around 22 feet. Prince William Sound, easterlies 30 knots, seas 7 feet. And for Cook Inlet, wind all the way up to 45 knots out of the northeast and seas up to 21 feet. On Sunday for South Central, southerly winds 30 to 25 knots and seas up to 21 feet. For Prince William Sound, southeasterlies 20 and seas 4 feet. And for Cook Inlet, 15 to 25 knots and seas up to 7 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island waters, Chillicothe Strait, northeast 45 knots, seas 20 feet. On the outside, wind ranging from 25 to 40 knots and seas 17 feet. And then on the Bering Sea side, northerlies 30 knots and seas up to 12 feet. On Sunday, wind coming around to westerlies. For Chillicothe Strait, 25 knots, seas 9 feet. On the outside waters, up to 30 knots, seas up to 21 feet, and that would be with a southwest swell. And on the Bering Sea side, 20 to 30 knots, seas up to 17 feet. For the Aleutians, a lot of northwesterlies in there, gale force 35 knots, tapering off as you get further out west. Seas up to 16 feet on the Bering Sea side and 15 feet on the Pacific side. Then we have a lot of westerlies, and then switching around to south as that strong weather system approaches from the west. 30 knots in the eastern section, seas up to 17 feet on the Bering Sea side and 18 feet on the Pacific side, and then up to 18 feet on the outer western Aleutians. For the west coast, northerlies, 15 to 30 knots, seas up to 10 feet down by the Pribilofs. And then northerlies continue on Sunday, 15 up to 30 knots, seas 13 feet down by the Pribilofs and 7 feet down by St. Matthew Island. For the Arctic coast, easterlies 25 knots along the North Slope, 30 to 35 knots from Wainwright to Point Hope, and easterlies 25 knots through the Bering Strait. On Sunday, easterlies again 20 knots along the North Slope, 30 to 35 knots Wainwright to Point Hope, and northerlies 25 knots through the Bering Strait. So recapping our weather for tonight, we have that low pressure system well south of Sitkinak Island, 972 millibars, lots of onshore flow and rain in the Gulf. As you get to the higher elevations, you'll get snow. We have some snow along the Brooks Range out to Kotzebue Sound, little light snow, some blowing snow as you get farther west, and then snow showers all over the Bering Sea. On Saturday, that low is now 971 millibars. The front has moved up to the Gulf Coast. Again, lots of rain, snow showers over the interior and in the Bering Sea. And then on Sunday, we can see the comers. First of all, we have a 972 millibar low out by the Komandorsky Islands, headed toward the east. Lots of wind with that system. And then a big slug of warm air in that low 99 millibars well south of Kodiak, and that's coming up, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems later Sunday into Monday, and then on Tuesday some really heavy rains in southeast Alaska. Well, that's all the time we have. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.